thank you for your flexibility, but I guarantee it will be worth your time. Nicholas, you can see the PowerPoint? Okay, great. So
Yep, looks good.
All right, so welcome to Ethics Week. Here we go. It says sharing content. What do I do here? Okay, all right, so.
That look good. Sorry.
Now, can you go ahead and see the PowerPoint then?
Yeah, we're looking at the home, the first slide, the welcome
All right,
page.
the Ethics Week, there it is. Well, welcome to Robert's Rules Made Simple. Nicholas, I don't know if you were able to go ahead and give kind of the introduction. I was offline, or did you want to start that now, or are we?
Yeah, I introduced you a couple times.
Okay, great.
But I didn't,
I've been well introduced.
I didn't say that you've brought your program to over 8,000 boards. You're a certified speaking professional. But I did mention that you created the district's Robert's Rules of Order training portal. So,
There we go.
and I'm Nick Weil. I'm with the Office of Open Government, and so go right ahead, Susan.
All right. So
I've admired Susan for a long time. She's an admirable, YouTube hustle and energy, and so it's an honor to have her. Go ahead,
well,
Susan.
thank you Nick. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And I want to welcome all of you to Parliamentary Procedure, Robert's Rules Made Simple. And for me, it's really important that we set this in the scope of we're using Robert's Rules of Order as a tool for healthy board dynamics. So I can guarantee you this will be kind of unlike any Robert's training you've probably attended, because I really believe that Robert's Rules of Order is a tool that helps to foster board dynamics. Now, something kind of is clicking here. I don't know what's going on this evening. Here we go. Come on here. Is it going to forward? My PowerPoint is not forwarding. We're going to make this whole thing difficult, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. So can we just see my PowerPoint like this? I'm not going to use any of the fancy bells and whistles. Can you see it still?
Yeah, that looks great. Just do it that way.
I'm just going to go this forward. So I like to start here. So basically, Robert's Rules of Order has gone through 12 different revisions in its day. It was written back in the 1800s by General Henry M. Roberts. And I love this preface from the 11th edition. It says, but one of the greatest needs of parliamentary procedure today is for an increased yet relatively small basic portion of it to become common property of everyone. And that it's not about becoming a parliamentarian. It's making sure that everyone on your board has an understanding of what I call the fundamentals. And so I'm excited to share that with you today. And I want you to know that even though we have got started a little bit late, what's great about this webinar and this training is that there is so much more available to you after you leave this webinar. We have created the Robert's Rules of Order training portal. This portal is available to all DC public body members and their APCs. And we're going to talk about how to access that portal at the end of this webinar. And I want you to know that this portal has been designed to really support your board members. And my desire is that you become an advocate in ensuring and inviting all of your board members to interact on with the content that is there. So I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. I'm going to move that out of the way, and I want to talk a little bit about Robert's Rules of Order as a tool. It's a tool to make business decisions. It's a tool to help you keep order. It's a tool that supports communication. It's a tool that will help you get work done. And ultimately, it is a tool that will support a healthy board dynamic. And it's important when you go back to your boards or your councils or your commissions or your committees that you start by really assessing the health of your board. I want you to think about this and kind of identify that unhealthy boards utilize Robert's Rules of Order as a weapon. We'll see boards utilize it as a way to exclude or to intimidate, and it also can be a manipulative technique. If any of these things are happening on your board, I want you to kind of really speak to this is an unhealthy dynamic. Not you're doing it wrong and you're bad. It's this is an unhealthy dynamic, right? Unhealthy board member behaviors kind of include acting overly competitive, speaking out of turn, creating kind of distractions, staying confused or lost. There's a lot of board members that don't learn the fundamentals, so they keep themselves at a disadvantage by not really understanding how to interact in a meeting. And then those board members who intimidate or shut others down. Now, if you ever see these kind of behaviors, it's important to really start thinking about how do we up-level the health of our board. Now, I wanted to give you a tool because what is health? What is a healthy board? And I think it's simply this. If you walk out of your meeting and your energy is like this, and you're thinking you've done a good job and it feels good, then that's healthy. But if you're walking out of your meetings and your energy is like this, right, then all of a sudden you have an opportunity to really up-level the way that your board is interacting with Robert's Rules of Order. That Roberts ultimately is a tool to foster these healthy board dynamics. And the interesting thing is that your board does not need to learn how to be dysfunctional, right? No board needs to learn how to be dysfunctional. It's like we get there somehow. We know how to do that. But the goal is to really learn how to be a high functioning board. And if you see dysfunction on your board, it is an indicator that you have a training opportunity. A lot of times we want to make those those meeting behaviors that don't feel good, we want to make the person attached to them wrong. And really that resistance is what creates more resistance in our meetings. What I am interested in, and the reason that I start all of my Robert's Rules of Order trainings here, is because I want you to advocate for the health of your board. Now, wherever you are, I would love for you to kind of look at these blocks. And the first three are things that I would love for you to say about your meetings. First of all, I want to advocate for the health of this board. So wherever you are, if you can say that out loud, I want to advocate for the health of this board. I want you to also incorporate the language, this feels healthy. This feels good. This feels healthy. And I also want you to start saying things like, this does not feel healthy. So what can we do so that this can feel a little bit healthier? And the last one is really, I want to encourage all of our board members to use Robert's Rules of Order properly so that we can walk out of our meetings with a sense, with a feeling, and with a knowing of this. They say the average working professional spends 38 hours per month in meetings. And it's the next statistic that blows my mind. And they say that over half that time is wasted. Right? And you think about that wasted time drains your energy, it drains your life force, it drains your passion. So we have a vested interest, especially in this day and age where we've had to move through the pandemic, to really start talking about how do we up-level the health of our meetings? Because we're spending a lot of time, energy, and life in those meetings. So I want to talk a little bit about the 3 C's, and this is how I house Roberts. That there really are 3 C's when it comes to your meetings. C number 1 is the content. Now, wherever you are, can you just kind of knock on your table in front of you? Just kind of knock on your table, right? Content is the stuff that you get done, right? So it's right there in front of you. Here it is. This is the work that gets done, the content that happens as a result of the time, energy, and life your board spends together. And you utilize, in order to make business decisions and handle the content of your board, you utilize Robert's Rules of Order. It's the decision-making process. Now, the next one is context. This is going to feel a little bit different, but I'm going to ask you to hang in with me. I want you to take your hands and I want you to feel the space around you real quickly. So just take a moment. Can you feel the space around you? Okay. And I want you to know that that space is your context. It's the energy of your board. It's the energy of knowing it feels like this, or it feels like this, or people are walking out thinking that meeting went like this, or that meeting went like this. We need to start tending to the context of our meetings. So it's content, context, and the next component is really starting to support those board chairs. When you empower the board, you also can empower the board chair. When you empower the board chair, then all of a sudden that board chair will empower the board, and that affects the flow of your meetings. So I'm going to spend just a brief moment giving you all a tool that I think is so important to bring into your meetings so that you up-level the success of what you're able to get done. Your individual mindset and the mindset of every single board member is crucial to ensuring a successful meeting. So what I want to do is real quickly introduce you to your brain. So wherever you are, can you just kind of make a fist? So real quickly, just go ahead and make a fist. And I'd like you to just kind of look at that fist and just notice that that fist is your brain. Okay, and many times we walk into situations and we're walking in with what we call the fixed mindset. Okay, so keep that fist up for a moment because I want you to recognize your fist is this fixed mindset. And when you are in the fixed mindset, you are in a communication pattern of win, lose, right, wrong, good, bad, us, them. It's a competitive mindset. I want you to kind of just shake that fist. And I want you to imagine you're shaking your fist at someone else and they're shaking their fist at you. How fun is it to be in communication with somebody who's in the fixed mindset, especially when you're in the fixed mindset? It creates tension. It's competition. It's combative, right? How many of you have been in meetings where you can just see, oh my God, we've been communicating from the fixed mindset. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to your brain in a little bit of a different way. I just want you to open up the palm of your hand like so. I want you to just kind of open up the palm of your hand, and I want you to take an intentional deep breath in. Because what's here that wasn't here before? Space, right? There's now space. Your idea can combine with someone else's idea, and a third alternative, a new possibility can emerge. There is no space in the fixed mindset. We have to make sure that we are walking in individually and collectively in the fixed mindset or in the growth mindset. And the growth mindset is win-win. The growth mindset is curious, it's open, it's playful, it's collaborative. I want you to just think about how much more fun would your meetings be if every individual board member committed to being more in the growth mindset. Because I believe the fixed mindset is where we start. It's our humanity that really brings us to the growth mindset. We have to intentionally call that in. Now, how do you move from the fixed to the growth? Now, I want you to take your fist real quickly, and I'm just going to show you and give you a little tool. And I want you to take your pointer finger. I want you to put it up in the air because it's impossible to go from fixed to open, but you can get one finger up there. I want you to put it at the corner of your mouth, and I want you to make this noise. Because once you start asking yourself, am I in the fixed mindset or am I in the growth mindset? How can I be a little bit more open right now? What questions can I ask instead of leading with a statement? Right? That sense of adding curiosity. So I want to invite you to bring more of that energy into your meetings. You know, I see so many meetings, so many well-intended people, but they're so entrenched to the fixed mindset that they don't get anywhere. And understanding Robert's Rules of Order is a great tool, but if you hand that tool over to people in the fixed mindset, they're going to use it as a weapon. And that's not what I'm here to do. I really want to support both the context and the content of your meetings, right? So we're going to spend the majority of our time really talking about Robert's Rules of Order today, but I wanted to make sure that we were setting a really important context so that you could understand that you are important in your meetings and your mindset is important. And the other board members that you serve with, their mindset is important. And this is something we very rarely ever talk about, taking ownership for the context that you're creating. And when you see something as being unhealthy, either in the content or the context, you have a training opportunity. This webinar will be posted on the portal so that you'll have the opportunity to review it and to also share it with your other board members, along with lots of other information. So utilize the information that's available to you. So let's start by looking at the 3 laws. Now, you know, Roberts has his rules and Susan has her laws, and I'm going to share Susan's 3 laws before we introduce Robert's rules. Number 1, everyone on your board or on your team needs to commit to learning what I call the 7 fundamental motions. This represents the roadmap of Robert's Rules of Order. Law number 2 is that Robert's Rules of Order is a team building tool. And law number 3 is that meetings should not be a waste of time. So I'm going to see if I can actually animate this again. Maybe some of the bugs were worked out energetically. Let's see. I don't know. There we go. I'm so excited. All of a sudden it works. So let's look at law number 1. Everyone on your board must commit to learn the basics. I want you to put 7 fingers in the air. This is it. This is your roadmap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is where I want everyone on your board to start with respects to understanding the fundamentals. Now, there are 7 motions that I'm going to introduce to you right now, and those 7 motions represent the 7 fundamental motions I believe every board needs to understand. But before we get there, I want to really quickly put out in front of you that when I say motion, you think question. A motion is nothing more than a question. So when someone makes a main motion, they're asking the main question. It's the main business question that they're putting before the board. So very important that we aren't afraid to make motions, because what I see a lot of boards doing, because they're afraid to make motions, is that people will talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and then somebody goes, should we make a motion? That wastes so much time, energy, and life, because Robert's Rules of Order states that you need to have a motion on the floor before any discussion happens. And so let's not waste any of our time, our energy, our life. Let's put the question on the floor, and then we start asking for discussion and debate. A motion is nothing more than a question, right? And so let's look at these 7 fundamental motions, or these 7 fundamental questions. So the first one is, and wherever you are, I want you to say main motion, right? So when you see main motion, I want you to think main question. Right? So this is the main business question. And sometimes people will say, well, Susan, you can't have more than 1 motion on the floor at a time. That's not true. Now, Robert says you can only have 1 main motion, but all of these other motions or questions that I'm about to introduce to you are in service of the main motion. So we've got amendment. Everybody say amendment, right? The amendment allows you to add something to or subtract something from the main motion. The amendment, say amend the amendment, allows you to change the change, right? You're changing the amendment, right? So we're amending the amendment. Number 4 is refer to a committee, right? I want you to kind of think about this like you're actually referring this. We're giving this to the committee so that they can come back with a new motion. The next one is postpone to a definite or a certain time. So I'm not ready to vote on this. I need more time to talk to my constituents. So I move to postpone this question to our next regularly scheduled meeting, right? So you need more time before you actually take action and vote. The next one is one that we hear many times, but I will tell you, people misuse this one. When you table or you lay on the table, you only lay a motion on the table in lieu of more pressing business. Sometimes people will try to use table as a manipulative tool, as a way to kill a motion. And what I would say is that, again, if we're really using Roberts as a tool to foster healthy board dynamics, don't use it as a tactic to try to manipulate a motion and kill it. Just vote the motion down. Right? And if you have a savvy chair and someone moves to table, the chair should say in lieu of what pressing business. Now, an example of that would be, we have a speaker that's coming in. We need to set up the room. The CEO or the executive director or the mayor is coming in. Okay, so we need to lay this matter on the table because we have more pressing business. But what I would say is, here we've got 7 fundamental motions. I want to take one of those off the table and say, don't use lay on the table. Okay, use these first 6 that I'm teaching you. The last one I want to share, because it's really my favorite, is I want you to put your hands in the air. This is it. Just kind of let your shoulders roll back. I know you've been sitting in front of your desk a little bit, so don't be shy to move a bit. But this one is previous question. Okay, so when you see previous question, you should be thinking what? Previous motion. Previous question or previous motion is designed to help save your meetings time, energy, and life. Have you ever been in a meeting and people just go on and on and on, and they're saying the same thing? If you'd like to stop talking and vote on the previous motion, then you'd raise your hand and you'd say, I move the previous question. And then the chair will ask for a second, and then you vote on the previous question. And if 2/3 of the board agrees with the previous question, then previous question passes, we stop discussion, and we vote on the previous motion. Okay, so it's a very important tool that supports you in keeping your meetings moving forward. So those are the 7 fundamental motions. I've just now said, maybe you can get rid of those. So I want you to focus on 6 of the 7 right now. Now, this next exercise is one that I would invite you to please steal. Please, take this. Say, I went through a webinar, amazing facilitator, not just, and she asked me to do this with our board, because something interesting happens with Robert's Rules of Order is that people usually overestimate what the person in front of them knows, which creates a very intimidating context or an intimidating environment in the meetings. And so I want you to steal this activity. It is very simple, but it will really shed some light on and open up the discussion on your boards. Now, I want you to start by doing a self-assessment. You just draw an arrow and you draw 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and what I want you to do is I want you to rate yourself. Okay, are you a number 1 with Robert's Rules of Order? Are you a number 2? You fear Robert's Rules of Order or you hate it? Are you a number 3? You get lost easy during meetings? You're a number 4? You're comfortable in a meeting, so motions, amendments, seconds, all these things are happening. You feel like you can kind of keep up with what's happening? Or are you a number 5? You're somebody who can teach Robert's Rules of Order. You're the person in the meeting that everybody kind of turns to when something goes awry. So what I want you to do is simply just kind of do a personal assessment. Where are you? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Right? And once you're able to do that, I want you to then create a chart where everybody will put their mark on the chart. And what I find is a lot of boards look like this. You've got a couple of people who are wavering up in the comfortable zone, and then you got a whole lot of people who are brand new, who fear it or get lost, right? And so I want you to think about how your meetings are going to run if you're in an environment where people are brand new or they fear it or they get lost. We need to create a collective goal to get everyone above the line. And what do you get everybody above the line with? The 7 fundamental motions. That's it. You do not need to become a parliamentarian. You need to just start by making sure that everybody understands the fundamentals. There are so many boards that are operating at a deficiency because people do not understand how to make a main motion, how to make an amendment, how to amend the amendment, how to refer something to a committee, how to postpone something to a definite time. We're not going to talk about lay on the table. And then ultimately how to move the previous question. So let's get everyone comfortable with the fundamentals. Law number 3, before we kind of get into some examples, is that meetings should not be a waste of time. If you want to say amen, that's great, right? That yes, meetings should not be a waste of time. And we need to start getting more intentional about this, especially when it comes to public service. This is the livelihood. These are people who are spending their life, donating their time, their energy, choosing to be in a space to make their communities better. And so I want you to just kind of really quickly look at this equation. Time equals what? Okay, you just kind of in your mind, just yell it out. Time equals, and what I hear most of the time is that time equals money. And while that's really, really true, and many of these boards and these commissions and these associations, they are responsible for lots of money, there's something more important that you're dealing with, and that time equals life. And so I want you to start asking the question at the end of your meetings, was this meeting a good use of our life? What's the point of ethics? Ethics is really about helping us having a higher standard for our life. Ethics and a good life go hand in hand. right? This is what is helping us live an ethical, good life. And I want to bring a little bit more of that life and that energy into our meetings, because your life is important and my life is important. And the people that you're serving, their lives are important, right? And so looking at this and starting to ask that question. So we're going to get you into the meeting now. All right, so we've talked about the 3 C's, which is the content, the context, and the chair. We've had the opportunity to kind of look at the context related to your mindset. Is it fixed? Is it growth? We've gone through and we've laid out the roadmap of Robert's Rules of Order, giving you an idea of what I want you to understand before you walk into the meeting. And now what I want to do is I want to role play with you like you are in the meeting. Okay, so now you're looking at the agenda, and I'm going to take you inside my brain. When I hold on to an agenda, I start looking at each and every item, and I ask myself these 2 questions. I ask myself, is this an information item or is this a business item? I put an I next to information and I put a B next to business. And what that does is it helps my brain understand that I have to deal with information items very differently than I deal with business items. People will say, you know, Susan, we use Robert's Rules of Order to run our meetings. And I'm like, well, that's only half true. You use Robert's Rules of Order to handle the business of your meetings. Hey, let me just say that again. Robert's Rules of Order only comes into play when you start handling your business. Information should just be facilitated through quickly and efficiently. So I'm a visual and I'm also kind of a kinesthetic learner. So I want you to kind of hear this. I love auditory messages as well. This is what information items should sound like in your meetings. Come on, let's go. Let's move through them. Come on, do it quick. Let's go. There should be an energy of we're moving through this information in an efficient and rapid way. And then business items should be handled like this. There's a slower, more reliable rhythm when it comes to Roberts. And so in a moment, I'm going to share with you what I call the rhythm of Roberts related to the 7 fundamental motions used in most meetings. So when you look at your next agenda, what are the 2 questions you're going to ask? You're going to ask, is this an information item or is this a business item? If it's information, you're going to move quickly through it. If it's business, you're going to use the rhythm of Roberts. All right, so let's go back in and get into the pyramid of precedence. So let's say that we start handling the business of our meetings. Now, I want you to make a triangle with your fingers real quickly, because again, this is how I imagine Robert's Rules of Order in your meetings. There is no stronger structure than the pyramid, right? And so I want you to just see that when you start handling your business, you have to get inside what's called the pyramid of precedence. That is what houses Robert's Rules of Order. Now, look at your thumbs real quickly. When you open up your thumbs, that's the door to get into Robert's Rules of Order. So you open up your thumbs, the bottom of that pyramid, and when you do that the same way, you always use a main motion. I move that we blankety blank, blank, blank. And when the chair says, is there a second? And the motion's been moved and seconded, boom, that pyramid is closed and you are now handling the business of your meeting. Now, what we need to understand is that as you make motions up the pyramid, so you vote the same way down. Okay, and we're gonna give you examples of all of the motions that we just looked at, but we're gonna focus on these first 3, the main motion, the amendment, and amend the amendment. All right, so everybody put up 7 fingers. Here's your 7 fingers. Okay, and then I took away one of the motions, so that just gave you 6. And so now what I want you to do is I want you to focus on 3. So we're going to go over these 7 fundamental motions, but at the end, we're going to focus on what I'm going to invite you to do with your board, which says, okay, before we go anywhere else in any of our meetings, let's make sure every single board or council or commission member understands how to make a main motion, how to make an amendment, how to make and amend the amendment, and then how to vote on an amendment to the amendment, on an amendment, and on a main motion. So let's just start there. And that will exponentially increase the effectiveness of your board meetings. So this is the roadmap, right? But this is where I want you to start. So let's just look at the rhythm of Robert. So we're going to go into a meeting and we're going to just be introduced to each of these motions. So I'm aware, Nicholas, can I hear people, or is everybody's mics muted? Well, can people unmute, or is it just you and I?
If you want all 50 attendees in a chorus,
Wow.
I think we can do that, but
Whoa. Let's see what it feels like. And then if it gets too rowdy, we can transition. Okay. So when I indicate to open up the lines, we're going to just kind of do something together. So I'm going to start by sharing the rhythm, right? So this is the rhythm of Roberts. Now, when the chair is going item by item, the chair is going to be saying the next item of business on the agenda is, and when it's a business item, that's an indicator that we're using Robert's Rules of Order. The chair introduces the item and then immediately asks, is there a motion? The chair doesn't say, hey, is there any discussion about whatever business item we're going to talk about? The chair says, let's ask the question and let's take a second to signify that at least one other person wants to talk about this. And then we're going to talk about business. So the chair immediately asks, is there a motion regarding business item X? And then a member will raise their hand, and all the members, you start every motion the same way. I move. Okay, I move. I move to make a main motion. I move to amend the motion. I move to amend the amendment. I move to refer this to a committee. I move to postpone this to a definite time. I move the previous question. You don't say I motion, or I think we should do this because, or I'd like to entertain. Just I move. I move. It's very simple. And then the chair will ask, is there a second? The second merely signifies that someone finds that topic worthy to discuss. Okay, so we shouldn't waste a lot of time with the second. And the second doesn't need to be written down in the minutes. It just needs to be, the motion was moved and seconded. And then we just move on, right? The second doesn't mean you agree, doesn't mean you disagree, just means that you find the topic worthy to discuss. Okay, so the chair will say, is there a motion? The motion's moved. The chair will say, is there a second? Once the motion has been moved and seconded, Robert says that the chair needs to restate the motion so it becomes property of the board. Now, why is this important? I'm going to take a little sip of my water because this is important. What I love is that Robert says once the motion has been moved and seconded, it becomes property of the board. And so we can let go of all our ego. The maker of the motion is no more important than anyone else in the room. The person who seconded it is not more important than anyone else in the room. This is now all of our motion. And so it belongs to everybody. So we can let go of our ego as the maker of the motion. And what we did is we just asked a question. Right? So I see a lot of boards where there's a lot of ego. Dun, 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 right? And that ego is detrimental to what it is that we're trying to do. And the more that we can start speaking about creating a healthier board dynamic where we can just merely offer the motion and then allow the board to work its magic, then all of a sudden we're going to up level what we're able to do. The chair asks, once the motion has been repeated, the chair asks, is there any discussion? And at that point, you can do one of two things. You can raise your hand and you can debate for or against the motion. I agree with the main motion. I disagree with the main motion. Or you make another motion. I move to amend the motion. And then the rhythm starts all over. So let's just see here. I'm gonna go here. The next item of business is approving the XYZ Club support for the 52nd annual community run. And I'd like to just have everyone read this out loud. So if we could just try to unmute the lines on the count of three, can we do that? We're going to all read this motion. Is there a motion? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
I move to approve. Susan, we're not going to get everybody,
Okay,
but
that's all right. That's all right.
I'll stand it. I move to approve the request for $1,500 from the XYZ Club to support the 52nd annual United Community Run.
You're beautiful, Nick, right? He's representing the voice of everyone today. And so the chair is going to get immediately into the rhythm. Okay, so the rhythm is once the question or the motion's been made, then the chair asks for a second. Is there a second? And once again, you don't need to be recognized. You can just say second, and the chair will say it's been moved and seconded. We need to move quickly through the second. It's to help us streamline. If a motion does not receive a second, then the chair will just say, is there a second? Motion dies due to a lack of a second. We will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is, okay, so the second just signifies that someone finds it worthy to discuss. The chair then repeats the motion. It's been properly moved and seconded to donate $1,500 to XYZ Club for the 52nd annual community run. Is there any discussion? And then following that rhythm, remember what you do is you debate for or against the main motion, or you make another motion. All right, so Nick, I'm going to rely on you again. The amendment is asked. What did you say? Is there any further discussion? Nick raises his hand. Nick?
So sorry, you've moved and you've introduced the well, I guess I'm making a parliamentary.
You just say right there what's on that board there,
Okay.
amendment, right?
I moved to, I'm sorry. Yes, I moved to amend the motion by striking out $1,500 and inserting $1,000.
Okay, so again, what happens then, once Nick makes that motion, right, it drops us into the rhythm of Roberts. The chair will ask for a what? The chair will ask for a second, and then we're going to move forward. Now, I'm going to put this in here as a caveat because some boards have a very deep history of making what's called friendly amendments. And what I want you to know is that people will interject and they will say, I'd like to make a friendly amendment. And a friendly amendment, it does not exist. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment. What Robert says is that if someone tries to make a friendly amendment, you just treat the friendly amendment as an amendment. Okay, so one moment, you'd like to make an amendment. What's the amendment? Right, so there has been a history. Have you ever, Nick, do you ever see friendly amendments at any of the board meetings that you're in?
Yeah, I chatted about that. It's in the chat. It's when somebody wants to be friendly, and so they suggest they'll say basically, member Jones has made the motion, and somebody thinks it'll be uncontroversial for Jones to change their mind, and so somebody, as you say, I'd like to, would member Jones entertain a friendly amendment to change 1,500 to 1,000, and then they're waiting for Jones to unilaterally take back the 1,500 and put 1,000. But no, it's too late. It already belongs to the floor.
Yeah, and that's the really important point, right, Nick, is that the sense of once a motion has been moved and seconded, it now belongs to the assembly, the entire board. It doesn't belong to the maker of the motion anymore. And so as a savvy chair, maybe in the moment, I'm not going to school that person and say, I took Susan's webinar and there's no such thing as friendly amendments. We don't need to do that. We could just treat it as an amendment. Are you wanting to make an amendment? Is there a second to strike out 1,500 and insert 1,000? Right? So as a chair, you can help facilitate your way through that. But there is no such thing as a friendly amendment because it unilaterally gives the maker of the motion too much power. Right? It now belongs. So can you see with my really big X? Don't make any friendly amendments. All right. So when you're in the moment and someone makes an amendment, the chair then asks for a second. And once it's been moved and seconded, remember all motions need to be repeated. It's been properly moved and seconded to amend the motion by striking out 1,500 and inserting 1,000. The chair says, is there any discussion? And remember, at that moment, that's when you can raise your hand and you can do one of two things. You can either debate for or against the motion, or you can make another motion. So what I want you to do is I just want you to feel the rhythm, hear the rhythm. And so the chair says, is there any discussion? And then Nick raises his hand and he's going to make this amendment to the amendment. Chair recognizes Nick.
Madam Chair, I move to amend the amendment by striking out $1,000 and inserting $500.
Okay, and then when we get into the rhythm, what does the chair immediately ask for, right? The chair says, is there a second to amend the amendment, right? It's been properly moved and seconded to amend the amendment by striking out 1,000 and inserting 500. Then the chair says, is there any discussion? Okay, and at that time, you could raise your hand and you could do one of two things. You can debate for or against the motion, or you can make another motion, right? So I'm just going to see, you're looking at the chat functionality. I'm not seeing it, Nick, but I'm going to ask this question. Can you make an amendment to the amendment to the amendment? Yes or no? Can you amend the amendment to the amendment? So we're going to amend the amendment and we're going to amend it one more time. Can we? Yes or no? So we've already amended it and we have an amend the amendment. Can we amend the amendment to the amendment? Yes or no? Nick, what do you see? What do you see? You see yeses? Do we see nos? What are we saying?
I see no answers yet. I guess my answer is
Well, what do you think?
if you're following Robert's rules, the answer is no. If you really wanted to, you could write a bylaw to allow that and override Roberts, but I wouldn't recommend it.
That's right. So you cannot amend the amendment to the amendment. You can't do it. It's just amendment, amend the amendment. That's it. Those are the changes. And then we have to, when we go back to the amendment, I can then make another amend the amendment, but I can't do an amend the amendment to the amendment. Does that sound confusing? Thank God, right? So we're only going to make two small changes that we're going to be discussing at a time, and then we have to take some action, right? So really important to understand that you cannot amend the amendment to the amendment and then amend it again. It would be too much. So I want to just go through these last very quickly because I want you to just see that they're there. So you have a main motion, amendment, amend the amendment, and the chair says, is there any further discussion? And we could move to refer. I move to refer this to the Finance Committee to report back at our next regularly scheduled meeting. So again, you refer things to your committees in order to save yourself time, energy, and life. I always know when you're in a high functioning team, when you trust your committees. You've got some work to do culturally if you don't trust your committees, because your committees are there to really serve your organization, your board. So the motion's been made, the chair asks for a second, they repeat the motion. Is there any discussion about referring this to the committee to report, the Finance Committee to report back at our next meeting? You can raise your hand, you can debate for or against the referral, or you can make another motion. Okay, so we're just going to just see this because I wanted to give you examples of all 7 motions. Postpone to a definite or certain time. I move to postpone this to our next regularly scheduled meeting. So the chair will then go into the rhythm of Roberts and he or she will ask for a second. Is there a second to the postponement? It's been properly moved and seconded to postpone this to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there any discussion? And then you can raise your hand as a member. You can debate for or against the postponement, or you can make another motion. Now, many times in meetings that doesn't happen, but I just wanted you to kind of see this. Now, if you get to this one, proper way of making this motion is I move to lay this matter on the table in lieu of more pressing business, but many times there isn't more pressing business. So I would just say avoid tabling. All right, the last one is, and this is a little bit different. There's a formal and an informal way to move the previous question. Formal is you raise your hand and you get recognized, right? So I move the previous question. When I move the previous question formally, it then requires that the chair asks for a second and then takes a vote. What also happens in meetings is people will also informally state the question. Let me say that again. It's informal. It has no teeth. It is of no consequence. It's no different than me saying, hey, Nick, I'm ready to vote. That's it. Hey, Nick, I'd love if people stop talking. I'd love to vote. It's just me just stating that I'm ready to vote, but it has no authority because it is not a formal motion. Not until someone says, I move the previous question, and then the chair will ask for a second. There is the rhythm of the second and repeating the motion, but this diverges from our rhythm because the chair will immediately vote on the previous question. So let me just share what the chair will say. The previous question has been moved and seconded. We will now vote on the previous question with a roll call vote, right? So you need a 2/3 vote to pass. And the reason why is because Robert states that if you are stripping the rights of the members, and your right is discussion and debate, it would require a 2/3 majority vote. All of the other motions that we've talked about are a simple majority unless your bylaws say something different. If someone just says question, call the question, then the chair just says, question's been called. Is there any further discussion? That's the same as just saying, hey, Susan's ready to vote, but does anybody else have anything they want to say? Right? And if someone raises their hand, then the chair will just say, okay, I call on member X. And you just move forward in the discussion. So very important to understand how to handle that. I'm going to rapidly go through the voting piece. I will end on time, even though we started a little bit late. I do want to just show this real quickly. We have 3 motions on the floor. Remember, I said there's 7 motions. There's really 6 I want you to focus on. And today, you're going to start with these 3. Let's all work to understand how to make a main motion, how to make an amendment, and how to amend the amendment, and then how to vote on them. You're inside the pyramid. So to clear this item of business and move on, how many votes would we have to take on the way down? And you can go ahead and put that in the chat functionality now. How many votes would we have to take in order to clear this item from the pyramid and move on? Right, so go ahead and put that in the chat functionality now, seeing some numbers pop up. So if we wanted to clear it, we would have to vote on the amendment to the amendment. And regardless if it passes or fails, we vote on the amendment. And then if we want to clear this item of business, we vote on the main motion. So we'd have to take 3 motions. We would have to vote on each of these 3 motions. So let's just look at this real quickly, because this is where a lot of people get confused. So just stay with me for a moment. What happens if the amendment to the amendment fails? So if the amendment to the amendment fails, it just simply goes away. The chair says the amendment to the amendment fails. We'll now reopen discussion on the amendment. So what happens is the amendment and the main motion, they all stay the same. But what happens if the amendment to the amendment passes? That's what I want you to see. So get a visual on this, because a lot of people who are new to Roberts get lost here. Look at what happens. It now becomes the new amendment. So the chair will say the amendment to the amendment passes. We will now reopen discussion on the new amendment, which is to strike out 1,500 and insert 500. Is there any discussion? And if nobody raises their hand, that's the indicator to the chair that it's time to vote. Seeing no further discussion, we will now vote on the amendment, which is all in favor, aye, all opposed. What happens if the amendment fails? Right? If the amendment fails, the chair says all in favor, aye, all opposed, and the chair says the amendment fails. We will now reopen discussion on the main motion, which is, right? And some people are like, well, Susan, didn't we just waste a whole lot of life? No, we're a lot more in agreement that we don't want 500, we don't want 1,000, we want 1,500, right? Now, what happens if the amendment passes? Okay, so important if we look at this. So the chair says, is there further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now vote. All those in favor of the amendment say aye, all opposed nay. The motion passes, right? The amendment passes. So we will now reopen discussion on our newly amended main motion, which is to approve the request for $500 for the XYZ Club to support the 52nd annual community run. Now, I'm starting here because this is where a lot of people really get lost. Make sure that you become an advocate for everybody on your board understanding the fundamentals. And beyond that, I do want to share one quick strategy for dealing with and debating business items. How many times have you ever been in a meeting and people just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk? They sit down and you have no idea what they want from you, right? So it's important to remember your job is to influence as well as be influenced, right? So we need to make sure that your debate when you're discussing business items is influential. Right, so start by step number 1, restating what motion you're talking about. Regarding the amendment to the amendment, it's my opinion A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. So regarding the amendment to the amendment, it's my opinion this, and then tell people how you want them to vote. So therefore, I encourage you to vote against the amendment to the amendment, or therefore, I encourage you to vote for the amendment to the amendment. You are there to influence as well as be influenced, right? Very important when you think about this. All right, so we're going to intentionally take a big deep breath because I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, and it all rests on this desire to really run great meetings. And when you walk into your next meeting, I want you to see just how dynamic that space is. You're having to deal with the content, which is the work that you need to get done. And having an understanding of that business decision-making tool, Robert's Rules of Order, is essential. We also need to start becoming stewards of the context and the energy of our meetings. And that really starts within the board member mindset, fostering a healthy board dynamic. And then lastly, the chair. And I want to say that in this particular presentation, we're not sharing information directly specifically related to the chair, but we do have information that we are offering to your board chairs that is featured on the portal. And so this is an example of what the portal looks like, and you can log on. So in order to gain access to the portal, we would invite you to please contact IT specialist Kevin Bridges to sign up, not just yourself, but every member on your board. Can I ask that those of you who are participating in this webinar today to please become an advocate so that all of your board members are making sure that Robert's Rules of Order is becoming the common property of everyone in your meetings so that you can up-level not just the work you're doing, but the experience that you are having and creating. So again, this training portal is available for DC public body members and their APCs. Please contact Kevin Bridges. His information is listed below. This webinar, along with a lot of additional content, will be listed on this portal and is available to you and your board to use. Whoa! So we moved through that pretty rapidly. Again, I thank you for being so patient with the technical issues that we were having. I do want to see if we can squeeze in a couple of questions. Nicholas, were there any questions or comments that we could facilitate through in the next couple of moments?
I think I've addressed them all as we've gone. We had a really good question about, does 2/3 mean of those present or the membership? And I said of those, unless you override it, which I don't recommend, 2/3 of those present, because especially in bigger boards, if you have a 80-member board, it can be hard to get 2/3 of your entire membership. So that's also a reminder that you don't have to have your quorum be a majority, and especially for bigger boards. If you have a board of 7,
Yeah.
sure, have a quorum of 4 isn't a bad idea. But if you have a board of 50, getting 26 people to rely, if you're not sure that you're going to be able to get 26 people reliably to show up, you don't have to, and you probably shouldn't establish your quorum as a majority.
Yep. Yep. Any other questions you want to share?
I think we're caught up in the chat, but yeah, anybody obviously speak now, please.
Right.
You don't have to wait for recognition.
All right.
And and I have a question, Susan. I confess I didn't know the answer to the. I told people in the chat that even though the movement doesn't have sort of privilege, the motion belongs to the floor. But one privilege the movement does have is they get to be the first person to speak on their own motion. So my question is, what if it gets amended? I moved the 1500 thing initially, and then somebody else successfully gets it amended to $500. Now we have the new main motion. You as the chair restate the new main motion with the $500. A whole bunch of people's arms go up. Does somebody get to speak first on it?
There is no specific person, because remember, once that motion's been moved and seconded and that individual spoke about that motion, they're just like anybody else, right? And so if it comes back and it gets amended, it's now the new main motion. And so
So
that person
the
may,
mover of the amendment doesn't get any priority.
unless, so once the motion's been, if the motion has been amended and then seconded, then whoever makes the motion gets right to first debate. Right now, and think about why that's so smart, because Robert says, don't spend time discussing, ask the question, and then the person will tell you, this is why I made this motion. So it makes sense that you'd want the person who makes the motion to kind of speak to their motion. But if a motion is amended and then it gets seconded, the person who made the amendment should have right to first debate. But once they've debated, then it's now everybody's motion. Right. And again, that's a courtesy. If I don't raise my hand after, if the chair says, is there any discussion? If I, as the maker of the motion, don't raise my hand, then the chair can call on someone else. You know, it is a courtesy that the maker of the motion gets the right to first debate, but he or she needs to be recognized by the chair.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of compliments. Thank you for joining us, Susan. As I've said, let us know. Join the portal. There's a great training video. As I always say, stick around through the credits. There's a nice Easter egg in the credits of the 1 hour video, and let us know how we can help going forward. It's in our regs about that you're allowed to that we can offer training and advice on parliamentary procedure. So please do so.
Yeah, and become an advocate and invite your board members. You know, get an Excel spreadsheet to Kevin of all of your board members and get signed up and do it as an activity as your board.
Yeah, Kavan.bridges@dc.gov to sign up for the portal, or open.gov office@dc.gov for substantive questions about parliamentary law.
Yep.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
everybody.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Happy Ethics Week.
Bye-bye.